Welcome back to Second and Short. It is Wednesday, March 1st, 2023, and let's be honest, college football is falling apart right now. But first, before we talk about everything, I got to remind y'all, make sure you're following us on all the social media accounts. Of course, if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, give us 5 stars and give us a follow. If you're listening on YouTube, like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. And then also make sure you join the subreddit, r/second 2nd and and short on Reddit. We're gonna be I'm gonna try and put a lot more effort into that, getting things posted, trying to put some news on there, try to put some topics on there, things we want to hear from you guys, and yeah, let's go through what we're gonna be talking about today. So of course, got to talk about all the news in college football, and then get into some NFL news. A little bit of stuff's happened, pre-combine, pre-free agency type things, and then we'll talk a little bit about college baseball. The new top 25 comes out every Monday, and then we'll hit stake your claim. We'll get out of here. Doing a little bit of a short one. It's a little bit late already. Brock, college football is
Yeah,
falling apart. It is.
yeah, it sounds about like that every year, doesn't it?
It does, but for some reason, on just a random weekend in February, everything seems to go awry, and it all starts with the Pac-12.
Of course it does.
So the Pac-12 and their commissioner George okay, I can't say his name. Kliavkov, I think that's how you say it. They've been hunting down a new media deal as the conference enters the final football season of its current deal. So far, haven't found a deal yet. And to make things worse, the Big 12 has a huge deal right now that's going to pay conference members 31.7 million annually moving forward. That is more than what the SEC is at right now.
Yeah, Texas and Oklahoma are pissed about that.
They'll be all right. SEC gets to negotiate pretty soon.
Yeah.
But not only does the Pac-12 not have a deal, but now the Big 12 is kind of their rival now with the teams that are leaving and USC and UCLA leaving. The Pac-12 doesn't have all that much. It's pretty top heavy, similar to how the Big 12 is going to be when Texas and Oklahoma leave. But thing is Big 12's got money, they've got media rights, and they've got stability compared to what the Pac-12 has going on. Pac-12 hasn't received an offer from Apple TV, which some people were rumored to say was happening. They're super far apart negotiations with Amazon for a possible one. And so right now, the leader in the bidding for the Pac-12's media rights is Ion Television. Yeah. So
Oh, that's
they're owned by I think it's called like Scripps Broadcasting, and they recently acquired Scripps Sports, and that is where the Pac-12 would be shown if they cannot find a better deal by probably around mid-April is what they're saying.
that is hilarious.
Yeah. So I couldn't even tell you what comes on Ion anymore.
The only thing I know on the Ion is they have a lot of good repeat shows like Sykes on there.
Yeah. Yeah, they always do show like those like I guess like the like early 2010 sitcoms show on Ion.
Yeah,
Yeah, that'll be the
that is.
perfect thing to watch before the Pac-12 games start, and then at 3 in the morning when they're over, you watch Psych.
Yeah, literally, that is quite possibly the funniest thing I've heard today.
Yeah, it is absolutely ridiculous. Um, and there's a few more things to say with it. I did see something pretty funny regarding maybe who should buy the Pac-12's media rights, and this guy proposed this on Reddit. He said that the Longhorn Network, as in Texas's sports network, should buy the Pac-12's media rights because when Texas moves to the SEC, they can't have the Longhorn Network anymore. They'll have
Yeah,
exclusive media rights with ABC and ESPN, and um, so it would be absolutely hilarious to see the Pac-12 playing on the Longhorn Network.
that actually would make a lot of sense, especially since Texas won't be able to be shown on there anymore. that would make sense for them, rebrand or whatever, and take out. Well, I don't know how TV and all that works, but start aiming towards the West Coast. But that is just so funny. Ion TV.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. And right now, it looks like if they can't get a media deal, then these schools are going to start jumping ship, and then the Pac-12's really fucked.
Yeah, I think.
Oh,
I
go ahead.
mean, sorry. I was gonna say the biggest thing for them is that they're letting USC and UCLA go. I mean, that's probably two of the biggest, fan bases I would imagine in Pac-12. I understand Oregon and Washington State and them. I'm sure they have pretty good fans or whatever, but I feel like USC, especially USC, gets the most of the Pac-12.
Yeah, it definitely does. Like viewership wise, when it comes to like the actual fans in the stadium, those two schools don't really do a great job. But they get eyes, and that's the biggest thing for media rights. And that's huge in negotiations. You're missing out on a ton of revenue if you buy the media rights for the Pac-12 and there's no UCLA or USC. And now it's getting to the point where there's a couple other schools that might leave. Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC, spoke about realignment and the possibility of the SEC snatching up some Big 12 teams. And he said, we haven't really expanded our geographic reach. He said, our longest trip will be from Columbia, South Carolina to Austin, Texas. And that's shorter than the shortest trip for the LA schools. Yeah. Columbia, South Carolina to Austin, Texas, the longest as the crow flies in the SEC. That's the longest road. But from I guess it'd be USC or both of them are pretty close to each other. So whichever LA school to I believe the University of Wisconsin is the westernmost school in the Big 12 is that trip is
I thought
longer than
I
Columbia to
thought the
Austin.
UCLA were joining the Big Ten.
Oh, did I say Big 12?
Yeah,
Yeah, Big 10. Yeah, my bad.
yeah,
They're
and
like
I
the
mean,
same thing.
yeah, and, going from USC, UCLA all the way to Rutgers, like,
Hey man, there's nothing better than a Tuesday night college softball game between USC and Rutgers in Piscataway, New Jersey.
yeah, that's just doing nothing really good for the. I I don't understand why they. I understand why, because money wise, you're going to be making way more money, but that is so stupid for their players because that's going to affect them in so many aspects. They're
Yeah.
going to be missing so much school because at the end of the day, you go to college for school.
Yep, you're a student athlete for a reason. And the biggest thing is like when it comes to the not just football in other sports it's way worse because football you play once a week and you get a bye one time there. In college basketball you're playing every couple days. College baseball is the same way. It's really going to affect these athletes when you've got to travel across every time zone to get to an away game, and then the next day or that night of you fly back.
Yeah, that is going to take a toll on the body. And on top of it, there's no way they're, especially the UCLA schools, with having travel as much as they're going to have to. That's not going to be good on their teams at all because they're going to be so jet lagged. Because
Yeah,
again, they'll be traveling over 4 time zones for like a 1 day game.
yeah, it's gonna be horrible. I think, and I'm sure they don't care because they're getting so much more money joining the Big Ten. But it's like at this point the Pac-12 is really getting screwed because when you look at how everything's going to kind of stack up, the Big Ten is going to be partnered with Fox, CBS, and NBC, and that deal starts this summer. NBC also remains in business with Notre Dame. The SEC is in its final year with CBS, and it's already hitched exclusively to ABC and ESPN starting in 2024. The Big 12 struck a huge deal with ESPN and Fox, and then the ACC will remain in their deal with ABC and ESPN. Who does that leave the Pac-12 for? Because Fox, CBS, and NBC have all of their eggs in the basket. and we know ABC and ESPN are putting a ton of money into the SEC and a pretty good deal of money into the ACC. It does really screw over the Pac-12 right now.
Yeah, and especially you think like West Coast, like you would really think Amazon and Apple and those people would really be going for it, you know? Because that would just make for me. That just in my mind makes sense.
Yeah, the problem I see with that with Amazon and Apple is that they're both exclusive streaming services. They're not like they don't have a cable network. So like what most people thought might happen with like Amazon would be like a featured Friday night football game, but like that's not going to pay enough money for you to, kind of spread your media rights apart across different networks.
Yeah, I really like you said. There's nothing for them that would really make sense. I'm trying to think of any other network, but I mean, they're all being used.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation here with the Pac-12. Um,
Give them sports.
yeah, and now it looks like possibly Oregon and Washington would be the next ones to walk.
But where would they go?
People are saying they'd go to the Big 12 to replace Oklahoma and Texas because supposedly the Big 12 is trying to become like a huge conference, like team wise.
Hmm.
And so they're losing 2, but they already brought in what, 4 this like
Yeah,
for this coming season. So they've already gone up 4. They're going to lose
so they're
2.
14 now. By the way,
Yeah. And then they're going to bring in 2 more as soon as Oklahoma and Texas leave if they can get Oregon and Washington, which once again geographically doesn't make a ton of sense, much better than what the Big 10's doing. Regardless, it's still not great when, you know, what team just got into the Big 12? Did UCF join the Big 12? Is that right?
Big 12 got UCF, Houston, um, Cincinnati,
And BYU.
and
Uh,
BYU. Yeah,
yeah, so that means that if they added Washington and Oregon, Washington has a chance to fly to UCF for an away game.
yeah. That again does not make any sense to me
Yeah.
because, like you said, Monday night, Tuesday night softball game. The Washington girls are going to fly from Washington, Spokane, or wherever it is, wherever they are,
Yeah, I think they're in
all
Spokane.
the way to Orlando, Florida.
Yeah. It,
That
it is bad,
four
man.
that is four time zones, one corner of the country to another. I just that's just so dumb.
Yeah.
And I know money or whatever, but at what point are you just like, this is going to be so taxing on my student athletes and coaches and family and all that that we shouldn't do this.
Yeah, and just to kind of top it all off, a very obvious change here. Pac-12 Media Day for this coming fall was moved from Los Angeles to Las Vegas. Makes sense. Not much to do in
So
LA anymore for the Pac-12.
is the Pac-12 looking to take anybody? You know, San Diego State or uh, Las Vegas? Any team the Pac-12 is looking at taking up?
I don't know. I think that there's probably a few schools that are maybe worthy of it. You could pick up like a Boise State. I think Boise State deserves their shot in the Power Five. Yeah, San Diego State would be another one. There's a few other teams out there in the West that could possibly make it into the Pac-12, but I think first, if you're a team, even if like, you know, you want to get into the Pac-12, you'd like to see where these media rights negotiations are going first because you might find yourself on Ion before you know it.
Yeah, yeah, man. I mean, I just imagine. I mean, I don't blame the people at Big Ten or the people of Fox wanting to take over the Big Ten because that's way big. You get way more viewers from Ohio State and Michigan than you probably do any other SEC or any other Pac-12 game.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a huge move.
I just I want to see people just stay geographically because that makes the most sense to me.
Yeah, I think it does too. I don't know why we've moved away from that. Like it seemed like there was no problems with it until, well, I guess UCLA USC was the first one, and then that was followed by Texas and Oklahoma. But at least Texas and Oklahoma are still like pretty much in the South. It's not the Southeastern Conference anymore, you know, geographically, but it's still the South. The Big
Yeah,
Ten is the Midwest, and you know, a little bit of like the Northeast, if you will. But you just picked up two teams in Los Angeles.
yeah, no, and the ACC, Atlantic Coast. All of the ACC teams border the coast of the Atlantic.
Yeah,
And again, like you saying, Pac-12, the same thing, but on the opposite side. I don't get it. Doesn't make sense to me. I understand money makes money makes the world go around, apparently, but I don't think this does not do anything good for the players.
yeah, I completely agree. Well, let's talk about the ACC because it's also seeming to fall apart. So, my Florida State Seminoles, I think it's a fantastic idea. Whatever. Florida State athletic director Michael Alford kind of talked about some new revenue distribution for the ACC because it's gotten a little bit top heavy. So he said that the Seminoles contribute roughly 15% of ACC's media rights value, and they only get 7% of the distributions. Alford said, at the end of the day, if something's not done, we cannot be $30 million behind every year compared to our peers, meaning, you know, the SEC teams, things like that. The teams that Florida State, on just a media value level, competes with. They compete with the top teams in the nation when it comes to viewership and fan interaction and just overall like nationwide viewership. They compete with the best in the country, and they're not being compensated properly for it by the ACC.
Yeah, and I mean they're not only the thing for them is they're not only good in football, they are good in most all sports, baseball, basketball, girls softball, all the sports. Same with Miami down in Florida, down there. I'm sure they contribute a lot as well, and they're not getting. I would imagine it's the same thing, but yeah, that is. I understand money makes the world go around, but if they leave, where are they going to go? I'm sure the SEC would love to take them, but would we?
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't know. And there's so much like uncertainty with things like this, but let me continue kind of laying out a little bit more of this. So, Florida State's Board of Trustees asked about a buyout to leave the ACC. Their legal counsel says it's roughly $120 million. Um, he said, so if we make up 30% or 30 million, we're behind from our peers. We'd break even in roughly 4 years if they continue to make 30 million, you know, hypothetically. Alfred or Michael Alford continued saying, at the end of the day, for Florida State to compete nationally, something has to change going forward. The key thing, obviously, being revenue distribution, which I completely agree with him. I think that it's important that the top programs in the nation are properly compensated.
Yeah, I mean, it's if you do the work, you get paid, and that's I think everybody can agree on that. I mean, that's how it works in the SEC. I'm sure Alabama they probably make most of the money. They probably make the most. So like I believe definitely if you do the work and you are the premier, especially like said in the ACC, you're the premier team. You should be compensated for it.
Yeah, and Florida State's president Richard McCullough seems to, I don't know, he's kind of floating in the middle, but he compared this whole situation to watching an airplane crash into a train wreck.
Yeah. Just to go out to the Pac, to just kind of put it all together, it's like it's when I say it's not good for the players, and that would be for Florida State and Clemson as well, because I actually don't know if Clemson's in here, but like I just tend to put them together if they want to leave the ACC, and then the same with the USC and UCLA. When I say it's not good for the players, I mean it's going to put them at a disadvantage to winning conference championships, going undefeated, doing all those other things too.
But at the same time, like you're still getting the same national attention, possibly on a bigger scale, because maybe there's more scouts from the NFL going to an Ohio State home game than, a Utah home game or an Arizona home game where USC is the visitor. So
Hmm.
in the same way, it kind of, when it comes to like your continued success after college, you're still gonna get eyes, possibly even more, but on top of it, your program's getting more funding.
True. Yeah.
But you were completely right with saying that Clemson is grouped in with this because they're also pissed off about the unequal or the equal distribution in the ACC. They said that because they've become a bigger brand name school, why would they be satisfied with their financial position in the conference? So, when asked if unequal distribution was a want or a need, Clemson athletic director Graham Neff chose the stronger of two words, obviously saying it's a need. Neff said in an interview, we certainly recognize the investment that we've continued to make as an institution in our community and athletics, namely in football, which certainly drives a lot of value. That is important from a television and revenue generation standpoint. Is it time revenue distribution within conferences, or at least the ACC, is done differently? Yes, I've been very active in those conversations within the league and continue to expect to take a leadership role in our desire for that to be a change circumstance urgently. So, yeah, it seems like Clemson wants to join the boat, which I think that Florida State and Clemson would work in the SEC.
I think that would work really well. And I think I would personally rather have Florida State and Clemson in the SEC as opposed to Oklahoma and Texas. But obviously, that's already a done deal with them. But I think that just makes the SEC such a powerhouse conference. If we have, I mean, Oklahoma's been to four uh playoff appearances, right? Three,
Yeah, I
maybe
think it's been three, I want to
three
say.
playoff appearances. Texas, I mean, they always have a chance. They have a great team. It's just, the boosters are too busy in their whole situation. And then you have Clemson, who's been to five or whatever. And then you have Florida State's been to one, and they have, or a potential now to be at more. So you would run into a situation of like, okay, the SEC would probably have 3, 4 player team, probably more if we expanded it now. The playoffs would be nothing but SEC teams.
Yeah, well, when you think about it, Clemson and Florida State have won titles more recently than all but three SEC teams.
Yeah, and I mean they've won titles. If they join the conference, they've won titles more recently than everybody else in the nation. The only other team to win a national title and since 2008 is Ohio State. Everyone else has been the SEC or ACC.
Yeah, exactly. All right, and so yeah, that just kind of brings us into this continued talk with Clemson. So, like, of course, the prospect of less money and less successful ACC schools, or sorry, less money for the less successful ACC schools is hard to sell to them. But in a place where stability is a huge part of schools staying in these conferences, keeping the bigger brands like Clemson, FSU, and even Miami in the fold could be beneficial for all of them. The Clemson AD also argues that uneven distribution incentivizes athletic departments to invest more and earn their cut.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing here is this is they're using this to their advantage. It's like some coaches when they get another coaching offer, they're saying, "All right, they offered me this much. What are you going to do to match it?" This is in my opinion, I think this is basically what Clemson and Florida State are doing right now. They're
Yeah,
just saying, "Look at everybody else. They're getting this much money, this much. They make, you know, look how they're doing this, and you're screwing us over."
yeah, it's ridiculous, but just to continue, the Florida State athletic director said that FSU and Clemson combine for around 24% of the value in the conference's media rights deals, and they collect a combined 14%. So they're missing out on 10% of the revenue through media rights, by the way that they value it. And people in the board of trustees for Florida State said that it's almost impossible for Florida State to compete nationally with the projected revenue disparity. And then when that board of trustees member said that, the athletic director interjected and said, "It is not almost impossible. It is impossible."
Mm-hmm.
And it was also explained that it would cost FSU about 120 million to leave the ACC, but that wouldn't account the expected litigation to break the the ACC's grant of rights. That's where the whole problem comes in, because as much as you can put a valuation on the buyout, you don't know, like, what's going to happen with the ACC side. How are they going to be okay with this? They're gonna do, like, there's obviously contractual agreements saying, like, you can't do this.
Yeah.
So
I,
it's all just a crazy situation.
yeah, and it's just crazy how money does this, you know.
Yeah.
But we'll just see how this all plays out. I'm sure, like I said, for Clemson, Florida State, this is basically a big bluff saying, "Hey, look at what everybody else gets. Why are we getting screwed?" You know?
Yeah. Look, if everybody else is gonna leave their conference, why can't we?
Yeah, and the SEC would say, "Hey, we'll happily take you."
Yeah, dude, think about how much more revenue that would bring into the SEC, because now Florida State is a conference matchup. That's huge. You'd
Mm-hmm.
have Clemson playing
South
against
Carolina.
Alabama. You'd have them playing against South Carolina and Georgia. Like, teams that, South Carolina and Clemson have obviously been rivals. Clemson and Alabama have kind of created rivalries. And then, Georgia just being the national champion back to back years. They beat them in that in that season opener 2 years ago. There's kind of a rivalry between Clemson and Georgia when it comes to just their fans. But I think it just creates so much good stuff out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think if the SEC were to, if whatever happens, the SEC is able to acquire them, I think that's nothing but good things for the SEC, and that you would never see a national champion from any conference ever again.
Yeah.
You would also have all of the biggest names in college sports would be in the SEC.
And on top of that, this would come at a time where we expand the playoff as well.
Yeah, this would. I mean, there's just so many things that go into the SEC were to acquire Clemson and Florida State. You would have, just to name off the top of there, you'd have Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, Florida State, Texas, Oklahoma,
LSU,
LSU,
yeah,
Texas
like
A&M,
huge
Tennessee,
money programs, big historical programs. Like, there's
Florida.
so much possibility there.
Yeah, all 10 of those teams I just named are traditional powerhouses.
Yeah.
It is insane if that were to happen.
All right. Well, let's move into a little bit of just like the news that's going on. So I do want to talk about this real quick. I thought it was interesting. So there's 8 teams in the FBS, excluding Independence, not playing a non-conference Power 5 opponent this season. And we're rather familiar with one of them because they've been doing it for years. It's Michigan, of course. They play East Carolina, UNLV, and Bowling Green. It's ridiculous that they can just keep doing this.
Yeah, that is, and all everyone. I've said it before, and everyone always wants to hate on the SEC. Oh, they're doing this, that. They're only playing all these cupcakes, whatever. When you look at it, most SEC teams only get one or two cupcake games a year. Whereas opposed to get someone like Michigan, they what was that, three, four?
Uh, 3.
Yeah, and the SEC cupcakes, they're usually you only get one FCS, and then you get one FBS group of five, and usually the group of five is pretty good. Like this year, Ole Miss, for example, played Troy.
Yeah.
They went on to be the second best group of five team this year behind Tulane.
Yeah, there's, a lot of reason why that's how it should be, honestly, when it comes to it, because look, you can get the FCS school. That's fine. Whatever. Everybody should get one. But on top of it, you give them you got to have a Power Five opponent somewhere in there that's non-conference because it just makes you look better. Honestly, look, if Michigan would have had wins last season over teams that were actually worth a shit, maybe, things change with how they're placed in there, and maybe they don't have to face TCU. Like it's just it's things like that where it's so like uneven when it comes to
Yeah.
scheduling.
Well, let me tell you, like for Ole Miss's schedule for the next, I think 6 years, starting in maybe starting this year, they get one FCS team, one Group of Five team, and then one then the other non-conference is an out of conference Power Five opponent. Then everything else is SEC. So that is 9 SEC games, one plus one Power Five team. So that's 10 Power Five opponents, then a Group of Five team, and then an FCS team. So only out of their entire year, that's only two possible give me games.
Yeah, it's ridiculous,
That's
and
how a schedule should be.
yeah, it 100% should be. And the other teams I'm about to name, like a couple of them, it makes sense. A couple of them definitely doesn't. But the next one being Boston College, it kind of makes sense. They really have not been very good in a while, and they're playing Northern Illinois, Holy Cross, Army, and Yukon as their non-conference games. Like these are all layups, but it's also Boston College.
Yeah, it's Boston College. Yeah, exactly. That's all you got to say.
And then Houston, they play UTSA, Rice, and Sam Houston. But I'm kind of giving them a break here because it's their first season in Power Five.
Yeah, they do deserve a little bit of a break there. Like you said, first season Power Five. They already had these scheduled.
Yeah, and then Liberty was on this list, but I can't say like anything because like they're not Power Five yet, so I don't think that they should have to schedule Power Five teams. It would be more entertaining because they're one of the better Group of Five schools, but they're playing Bowling Green, Buffalo, Old Dominion, and UMass. And just to add on top of it, they're not slated to play a Power Five opponent until 2027 against Virginia Tech.
Wow. That's actually crazy. I mean, I knew they've played a lot more SEC. Not they played Auburn and Ole Miss and a few others in the previous years, but that is crazy that they're not playing another Power Five until 2027.
Yeah, it's wild. And then Oklahoma gets on this list, and it's kind of unfair to them. So they play Arkansas State, SMU, and Tulsa, which SMU and Tulsa are both pretty solid Group of Five schools. But originally they were supposed to play UGA, but the SEC canceled that matchup, most likely due to this whole um, moving
Merger.
around. But yeah, I
Yeah,
think Oklahoma, like, it's another school where like they should have scheduled a Power Five, which they did. It just got canceled, so it's kind of hard to just be like, hey, another Power Five school should fill this spot. It's pretty tough
yeah,
to do.
yeah. Well, that's also something with Georgia this year when they got the easier schedule at the front. They were supposed to play Oklahoma, like we're talking about, but
Yeah,
both of them the schedule with the merging and all that, they had kind of got screwed over.
yeah, and then Oregon State, they play San Jose State, UC Davis, and San Diego State. This is fine. Oregon State, like they were actually pretty decent last year, but like it's not like they're a super big contender in the Pac-12. So like I'm not gonna knock them for not scheduling a non-conference Power Five.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those you're like, oh, it's Oregon State, meh.
Yeah, we'll see if DJ can even start.
Yeah,
And then UCF in their first season in the Big 12, they're playing Kent State, Boise State, and Villanova.
yeah. This is another one. They kind of get the pass. Their first year. Boise State's a pretty good game, but Kent State and Villanova. Eh.
I know Kent State gave Georgia a run for their money.
Oh yeah,
And then UCLA, for some weird reason, couldn't schedule an out of conference or sorry, yeah, non-conference Power Five. They're playing Coastal Carolina, San Diego State, and then North Carolina Central.
so Coastal and San Diego State, they're not bad teams. They're usually pretty good. The Group of Five.
Yeah, Yeah, they are, and it's still like a pretty good scheduling, but it's UCLA. It's a team that, though they haven't been fantastic at football really at all recently, um, they should still be scheduling out of conference Power Fives because they're a team that brings in viewership and for a little bit of fans.
Yeah, and well, I think that would bring their if they started having bigger games, that would help their fans. But I just also I don't know how do you have two ginormous schools in Los Angeles, the biggest city in the nation, and can't get any fans in your stadium? Like, and they play in the freaking Rose Bowl. Like, come on,
Yeah, but nobody out there watches college football.
that's true. Oh well, hell, they don't even watch NFL. Have you seen SoFi Stadium on a Sunday?
That's true. Unless it's Super Bowl Sunday, that place ain't packed.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into some more news. So, UGA linebacker Jamon Dumas Johnson was arrested for reckless driving and street racing.
Well, that's stupid.
Yeah, it seems like every week somebody gets in trouble for something they shouldn't have done, and it's just like something dumb.
Yeah, and I am a firm believer that Kirby Smart, like everybody's like, oh, Kirby Smart doesn't care. No, I feel like Kirby Smart actually does care because, and I'm sure they're running and running and running on top of all the legal stuff they go through.
Yeah, as you're listening to this, the University of Georgia football team is running.
Yeah, well, and my biggest thing is these guys they keep screwing up Georgia, and Kirby is like, okay, I can. He's probably I can take your scholarship,
Yeah,
but
especially like he was arrested. It wasn't like he was just like got detained or whatever. Like was just there. Like he's the one that did it. He was arrested for it. Like this is things that disciplinary action is most definitely needed.
yeah, well, and Nick Saban says it all the time. These are 18 to 22 to 23-year-old boys. They aren't grown up yet. You're still there molding them into being men. You shouldn't, kick them off the team immediately. I mean, yeah, that's really dangerous, really stupid, but that's not one of those, oh, let's just immediately kick them off the team. That's one of those you just say, what in the hell were you thinking?
Yeah. Exactly.
And you say, all right, you're gonna run until you either throw up or until I throw up. And you do that for a week, and I bet you they'll never do it again.
That's a fair point. All right, let's talk about this interesting thing that the Texas Longhorns athletic director Chris Del Conte said. Um, this first off sounds like every single Texas fan that's ever gotten like a Twitter account. This is how they tweet at all times. So he was asked uh, why they won't have alternate uniforms. He said, "If God wanted multicolored sunsets, he'd have made them purple and green, but he didn't. They're burnt orange. It's not old, it's not stuffy, it's Texas. It's the best."
That does sound like every Texas person in the history of them being around. Like that is do that like I almost want to be like, do you think I care?
Yeah, nobody gives a shit about how much you love your colors.
Yeah. Well, anyways, the vast majority of people think your colors are the ugliest colors in the nation.
Yeah, it's just orange. Stop making it
Yeah.
out to be something different. There's plenty of other teams to wear orange too.
Yeah, and they're better than you.
If you really liked your color, your mascot would be the orange, like Syracuse.
Yeah, they are the most orange team out there.
That's true. It doesn't get more orange than Syracuse.
They're literally the oranges. Like,
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to a little bit of just some coaching talk. So Austin Armstrong, I believe he was a defensive assistant for Alabama. He's taken the defensive coordinator job at Florida. Makes sense. Very smart move. Move in the SEC, get a promotion. It's a solid idea.
oh yeah, and I know he's gotten a lot of crap, but Pete Golding's a good coordinator, and I think, and obviously, as you said, he was a defensive staff underneath him, underneath both Nick Saban and Pete Golding. I think that's a great hire for Florida.
Yeah, exactly. And then Ole Miss is hiring Sterling Gilbert as the offensive analyst. He's a former OC at Texas, Syracuse, and USF. I believe he was the head coach of McNeese State as well.
Yeah, good hire. I mean, anybody who has ability, why not bring him on?
Yeah, I've always been kind of confused by the offensive analyst and defensive analyst position. I'm sure you could give me a little bit more information on it, but like what is their impact really? Are they just kind of like a assistant to the coordinators and just kind of give them ideas?
To my basically from what I've kind of dealt with is yeah they're another coach and they again like I said they're just kind of another coach. They're there, another set of eyes, kind of another person to like. It's almost like being a GA, but like you're too old to be a GA is what it seems like. Like you're doing like some crap. Like they don't do like all they don't go they're not doing all the crappy work, but they to me just they look at players, evaluate players. They do all this until they can get another job being a coach or whatever.
Yeah, that's yeah, that's some job that I've seen a lot as I've started to observe like the coaching hires in football more. Is that there's so many guys that get hired as analysts at schools.
Yeah, and that also goes to like it's a the NCAA only allots so many coaches and so many this that the other and so yeah I'm sure that's something else like they get paid separately. I don't even know it all. I don't know how any of that works. That's not my wheelhouse really. All I know is I know some of the analysts like they come out and they coach like they actually coach.
Yeah,
So and they're good like they know what they're talking about. They're understanding it. I just think they're there until they can get uh a position job, assistant position job, one of those.
yeah, that would make sense. All right, so let's talk about the highest graded quarterbacks in college football by season since 2014. This is by PFF. So in 2014, Marcus Mariota, totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And then 2015 was Jared Goff, which just kind of goes to prove that 2015 was not a great quarterback year.
Yeah, obviously not, but it also goes to prove like it kind of makes sense why uh Jared Goff was able, he went first overall or whatever it was.
Yeah, yeah, he definitely deserved to be highly touted. And then, the next 2 years, 16 and 17 were Baker. Once again, another thing that makes sense. He was kind of on top of college football at the time.
Yeah. He was one of the better quarterbacks at that time.
Yeah,
One
and
of the
he really was like not I wouldn't say he was the face of college football at the time. I would say he was like the villain that everybody wanted to see.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. He's really was the villain at the time.
Yeah, kind of like Johnny Football style villain.
Yeah, that's a great way to put him. I fully agree because I didn't like him. I used to not like him at all.
Yeah.
Then he
But
started doing those progressive commercials, and I really liked him.
all right, and then 2018 Kyler Murray makes sense. Heisman winner that year, of course. And then 2019 Joe Burrow. Once again, it couldn't have been any other way.
Yeah,
And then 2020 was Mac Jones, which, like I said, couldn't have really gone any other way. That's what happens when you're a Heisman finalist and your starting wide receiver is the Heisman winner.
yeah. When you come second in voting to your own wide receiver.
Yeah. And then in 2021, there was a three-way tie, which is crazy, but it was between Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, and Kenny Pickett.
Now, of course, CJ and Bryce make sense. Kenny Pickett's a little surprising.
Yeah, like Kenny Pickett kind of hit everybody's radar like halfway through the season just because he was playing at Pitt. But yeah, it didn't seem like he was that it didn't seem like he was on the same level even in just that season as CJ Stroud and Bryce Young.
Yeah, and I still refuse that like he will be on that same level when they all get in the NFL. He's a good quarterback, but the reason he got all that attention is from that fake slide he did.
That's true. Yeah, that got him a ton of attention. Like, of course, plenty of people were kind of on him already, but that definitely gave him like his name a lot more notoriety.
Yeah, and all I want to say, just since I just mentioned it, I really, good for him for using the rules to his advantage, but that fake slide was bogus. That was like it wasn't against the rules at the time, but I'm really happy they went in there and fixed that.
Yeah, it's a BS move.
Yeah,
All right,
but
and
that's all I.
then yeah, and then this year Jordan Travis of Florida State. It makes me so happy because like I absolutely despised what was going on at Florida State before this season started. You can ask Brock. I was losing my mind over everything. I couldn't live with Mike Norvell like a head coach. I didn't think Jordan Travis was a good passer. I thought he was just on the ground guy. He completely changed the nation's mind this past season, as well as Mike Norvell, and I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, he did a great job this season, and I mean, I've been telling you, you got to give Norvell some time, and that's the biggest thing in college football right now. No one wants to give coaches time to develop their program. Everyone expects an instant turnaround. Like for example, at Ole Miss, that it after year two it was 10-2, but this year we went 8-5. But Lane Kiffin has yet to get in his big class yet.
Yeah, once he has 4 years of guys, it's going to change a lot.
Yeah, I fully agree, especially after a year like this. He has 1 5-star, I believe 7 4 stars, and 3 3 stars or something like that signed in this class. It's not good enough to be top 25, but I believe it's like 27 or 28 or something like that. And then he had a top 5 transfer class for this season.
Yeah, yeah, and we'll do it soon, but we're going to go through like all of the transfer stuff that happened. I wanted to kind of let everything happen before we went through and talked about everything, but it kind of seems like the dust has settled on the transfer portal now. So we'll talk about that pretty soon, probably once like the combine and stuff wraps up and there's a little bit of downtime before the draft. But I want to talk about this BYU NIL thing because it is weird. Okay, so BYU football fans have the opportunity to pay to go on a NIL cruise with players in March. It's a $350 package. It covers 3 people for a 4-day carnival cruise from California to Mexico and includes player meetups during meals and mini golf.
That is interesting.
To me it sounds like hell. Like, what the
It
fuck do BYU fans do on a cruise? You can't drink, you
can't
can't
drink.
gamble.
Yeah, can't
What?
sleep with anybody.
And on top of it, why are the players there?
I that honestly, that is just so on par for the Mormons. Tell me that's just not like, they're just like such like nice. I'm sure like they don't do anything. They're just like so like pure at heart when it comes to like those type of things. So they're like, oh yeah, like that would be so cool to be able to hang out with the players on a cruise.
Yeah, I just feel like there's got to be some BYU players that are like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah, they're just like, Coach, I can't.
And like
Coach,
that,
I swear to you, one more time in that church, I'm losing my mind.
but like, it's so weird that they're branding it as an NIL cruise. Like, the players are gonna profit off of this. It's super weird.
Yeah, oh my, I could not imagine being. And this is gonna sound so mean. Like I know, they a lot of the players are very good with kids, or like they want to be nice to the kids, but I couldn't imagine being a Division 1 athlete, like a real adult, having to spend 4 days with 1,000 little kids, constantly trying to get my picture, want to do whatever it is, and like
Yeah.
I get it, but it's like I would probably not end up because at some point you're like I just want my own space, and you can't really hide from them because you're on a cruise ship.
Yeah, there's not very many places to go. And also like what are they going to do in Mexico?
Dude, you I don't know what they're gonna do. I feel
Like this just sounds like the weirdest situation ever. I kind of want to like go.
Yeah, I would love to like someone to video it and just like
Yeah.
let me watch the video.
I need
Yeah,
like
there's
a
some.
constant live stream of like what's happening on like the pool deck on the BYU NIL cruise.
I mean, there's gonna be no bikinis, no
Nope.
like
It's
like
gonna look like
I'm.
a 1920s beach.
It's actually gonna be like the Titanic. Like they just brought it
But
back from the past.
they're not crashing. We're not
They're
saying that that
not.
should happen. And if it does happen, we didn't say anything.
Yeah, it's gonna be in this in the around the horizon or the whatever the equator. So I think we're good.
Yeah, there's no ice caps down there. All right. This is so stupid. College football was a category on Jeopardy. I believe it was sometime earlier this week, maybe last week. And these questions were just absolute layups, but also it's Jeopardy and it's just three nerds staring at you while you ask these questions. But I'm going to go through each category's money value and I'm just going to give you the question. I'd love for you to answer them.
All
So,
right.
for $200, on January 1st, 1920, Harvard beat Oregon 7-6 in this annual game in Pasadena. You may be shocked to learn Harvard has not been back since.
Rose Bowl.
Yep. Okay. For 400, the sooner the better. Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray won back-to-back Heisman's QBing for this school.
Oklahoma.
All right. It's going to get tough, I promise. 600. Currently a Chief, part of the NFL, he threw for 5,052 yards and 41 touchdowns in his last year at Texas Tech in 2016.
Pat Mahomes.
Okay. 800. I'm telling you, it's going to get hard, okay? 800. By the end of the 2020-2021 season, this head coach had won 6 national championships with the University of Alabama.
Old Nicholas.
All right, the $1,000 question. It's a real hard one. It's a real cat fight at the Bayou Classic, with the Jaguars of Southern University facing the Tigers of this state university of Louisiana.
Oh, Louisiana State University.
You've got to be fucking kidding me. These can't be real questions.
They can't be, no, right?
Like, that last one is like, it literally gives you the answer, and you just have to move one word at the end.
Yeah, you literally just sub around. That is no way. Please tell me no one missed.
I'm sure they did.
Oh, someone definitely messed one of those up. They're
Yeah,
like Paul Bear Bryant for for the $800 one.
it's Don Shula. Yeah, like,
Uh,
it amazes me as somebody who just has watched college football their whole life that there are people out in the world that wouldn't know the answers to any of these questions.
yeah, that just goes for like most any sport for me though. Like there I can give you a pretty good answer for most any sport, especially collegiate. And you could ask me the question, I'll probably be able to give you the answer. But that's just me. I've always been a sports guy. But like you said, it is just insane to me. There are actually people in the world who would have no idea.
Yeah. And so to kind of go back to a little bit of this Pac-12 situation, people are saying that the Big Ten is not done stealing teams from the Pac-12.
I that is just so dumb to me. I think they're saying that mainly because of the whole if Florida State and Clemson leave and the SEC gets them, the Big Ten's going to want to keep rating.
Yeah, they might
But
as well. You know, why not just grab Washington and Oregon?
oh yeah, I would 100%. I wouldn't blame them. I would do it too. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's all going to get worked out, and most of the conferences are going to end up staying the same. With that being said, I mean, I hope it doesn't because again, I think it's so stupid. UCLA and USC are moving,
Yeah.
but that's just
All right, well, let's talk about an NIL thing that does kind of make sense to me. So this is a Florida State fan initiative. It's called the Battles End Collective. They launched a website which allows Florida State fans to contribute money towards NIL deals. I think this is a fantastic way to do it, as opposed to a bunch of Mormons taking a cruise to Mexico.
I agree. Ole Miss does something very similar. It's called the Grove Collective, and it seems to work very well.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic way to just kind of, because obviously the school can't pay them directly. That's, how all this works. And it's a great way for the fans to contribute, just like how any fan, by just going to an NFL game, contributes to the salary of the players. These fans are probably people that do go to Florida State games or at least watch Florida State games, and they can contribute to the players that they get to watch week in and week out make money.
Yeah, and I know for like the Ole Miss one, for example, the Grove Collective is more. I'm I could be wrong here. I think I'm pretty sure that's like it's like its own business. It's like it's its own thing that's a part of the university, but not really. But it's where the companies and the individuals want to sponsor the players or whatever, and they go through them, and then through there also individual people can say, hey, I would really love to give money to Ole Miss football, and then if you give X amount of money, you get a free T-shirt, you get a free bag, you get a meet and greet with whatever it is, those type of things.
Yeah,
And I think that works way better than like having the kids have an agent.
yeah, I think so as well. I think that the way that this is kind of panning out, like this is the really good side of what has gone on with NIL. Of course, there's bad parts like Jaden Rashada with Florida and how he was promised 13 million, and then they were like, "Oh, sorry, we can't," and then like he's got to find a new school, like things like that absolutely sucks. And I think that promising prospects and like high schoolers money, and then not really being certain that you can hold up your end of the deal is kind of the worst that we've seen with NIL, and it is horrible.
Yeah, I definitely got to say they need to put something in there like you cannot go to a player, your boosters are not allowed to say can promise money or anything. Like just be like, all right, the ESPN already does an on three. They already in 24/7 as well. The three big ones, they already do their own. This player's gonna be estimated at this much money, whatever. And like, all right, you're estimated at this, or they could be like, all right, you're estimated at this, like we can do whatever, but not like this is like if they have those one because we know it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
But I don't know. There's just so many more rules they just need to put in place for it because I don't think it's ruining football because you still have Georgia and Alabama who are getting great recruits because they have the best coaching staffs in college football. But then you have places like Texas, for example, where the coaching staff it's good, but it's not amazing. But like Quinn Ewers is probably making I think he said he's making like close to 10 million a year or something.
Yeah.
And it's like, at the end of the day, like that's a lot of players. Like Nick Saban said it just a few weeks ago. A current player and a recruit said, "All right, how much are you going to give me?" And he said, "All right, you're gone."
Yeah.
That's
It's a vicious cycle, honestly, with how it's working out.
Yeah, and I really would like that because if I was a coach and a player said, "All right, how much would you give me to go here?" I'd say, "All right, thank you for the meeting, but I just because of that, you're a great player, but I don't want someone on my team that's all they care about." Like I understand money's a part of it now, but like college football at the end of the day, that's not what college football is about.
No, it's not at all. I do want to talk about this real quick. So Anthony Richardson has absolutely flown up draft boards. He's now like his odds to be first overall have just absolutely boomed. Like, how does that happen when he isn't playing any football right now? Like, is there something that we're completely missing with Anthony Richardson that all of the sudden he's just flying up boards?
I'll give you exactly what we're looking at: size. He has a pretty good arm, and that Utah game.
Yeah. I guess like yeah, his build and like his athleticism is fantastic. It's exactly what you're looking for in a young quarterback. It just seems like he didn't show it off enough.
The biggest thing with him is he needed another year in getting developed. and learning.
Yeah.
But that, we see it happens all the time in the NCAA is, they see the big money in the NFL, and instead of, perfecting their craft, and I don't blame them, go make your money. And they go into the NFL when they're not ready. When I think if he spends another year in college, and let's just say he just does nothing but develop this whole off season, he could potentially be a Heisman winner. He could, then he would definitely be number one. He wouldn't have to worry about having all this pressure being number one overall or anything if he can actually prove it.
Yeah, exactly. I think the combine's going to be huge for him. I'm about to get to a couple of guys, or I think that'll be in the NFL news where I'm going to talk about a couple of guys that are and aren't participating in the combine. I will go ahead and say Anthony Richardson is one of them that will be participating. I want to talk about this real quick because I think this is wild. North Carolina is expected to hire Freddie Kitchens as their tight ends coach. If you don't remember Freddie Kitchens, he was the head coach of the Cleveland Browns like 4 years ago. And now he's the tight ends coach at the University of North Carolina.
Wow. Yeah, I was about to say, I knew that name sounded so familiar.
Like, that is a extreme fall from grace.
I'm pretty sure if I recall, he kind of got screwed at the Browns as well.
Oh,
But,
definitely.
he got a lot of money, and, I don't blame him. I would want to be back in coaching too, especially, I don't think he's that old, is he?
No, I don't think he's like extremely old. I think he's probably up there, probably 50s.
Let's see. Yeah, he's 48.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, okay. He ever since he left the Browns, he was tight ends coach for the Giants. He was a senior offensive assistant, and then he was a football analyst at South Carolina. Now he's actually a real coach again. He's tight ends and run game coordinator, so it's not like it's the worst thing ever.
Yeah, yeah, that's not as bad, but it is just interesting to see a guy who just a couple of years ago was the head coach of an NFL team to end up at the University of North Carolina. That's crazy. And I'm not sure where he went to Alabama. So maybe he's just looking to get a little bit of a start in college coaching so he can go be at Alabama with Saban.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's what he's looking for, to be able to make it back to that one day. And I don't blame him. He only got 1 year as a shot in at being a head coach before they said get out.
Yeah, it's a tough break for him. I just thought it was why I feel like that's something you definitely don't see often. A guy that who really wasn't that bad of a coach with the Browns. It was just like I think that was what the second year of Baker, and
Yeah,
obviously there was a ton going on. But then again, like Kevin Stefanski took his job and then got him to the playoffs. So you know
I mean, he went 6-10 in his one and only year.
that's better than the Browns were doing before.
Yeah, I think he just really got screwed again.
Yeah, I think so as well. So I saw this interesting tweet here by guy Eric Ford. It's an old picture of this paper that was a note sent to ESPN. This guy mailed his idea for a 12-team college football playoff to ESPN in 1994. Typed on his mom's 70s IBM Selectric 2. I think that's fantastic. Like you can tell that this is definitely like some old paper. It's even got like stains and stuff on it, but this is fantastic. I actually really like how he set this up with like the different bowl games and stuff being the different stages in the playoff as well.
Yeah, I actually kind of like this, and I think this is the format they'll most likely be going for, because we are switching to a 12-team format in 2024. Correct?
Yes.
I think the format is going to be very similar to this.
Yeah, I think it's super cool and like it is interesting to see the teams that are on here because like number one, Nebraska. That's kind of crazy. Number two was Penn State, three Alabama, four Florida, and then at five you have Miami, six Colorado, a team that certainly hasn't been that close at all, and then A&M, Colorado State was number nine, and then seven was Florida
Florida State.
State, Number 10, Kansas State, and then Virginia was number 12. Yeah, and Oregon was number 11. But like the way it progresses, so in the first round, so the top four get a first round bye, but in the initial round before that, they'd play the Sun Bowl, the Gator Bowl, Holiday Bowl, and Liberty Bowl, and then in the second round it'd be Peach Bowl, Citrus Bowl, Fiesta Bowl, Cotton Bowl, and then your semifinal games would be Sugar Bowl and Rose Bowl, and then your championship game would be the Orange Bowl. And it says he put like some notes down at the bottom that say like Sugar, Rose, and Orange Bowls could rotate national championship games from year to year. And then the teams that don't make the playoffs would participate in other bowl games not included in the tournament. That's crazy that he did this in 1994.
And I kind of like the idea of having bowl game even for the first round for player teams 5 through 12. But I just don't know. I kind of also like the idea of like having more bowl games for everybody else to go to. But that would those 5 through 12 having those bowl games, I would get a lot more coverage for them. So it's a lot of if I think if we do this, it should be the higher seed gets the home, and then it goes to bowl games for semi, semi and quarters.
Yeah, which I think is the idea. I think that's what is being implemented.
Yeah, I think that is I like that a little more, only because those other bowl games, let them bring in other people, let them, or you could just do 4 random bowl games each year,
Yeah,
just
I,
see
I think that'd be cool.
graphically if it would be okay. We have Ole Miss versus Clemson. Let's put them in the Nashville Bowl or the Liberty Bowl or the Belk Bowl. Those are all right there in Tennessee or Carolina. That's a put them in Nashville. That's halfway between both of them.
Yeah,
So I think that'd be pretty interesting to see, and that would get a lot more viewership for a lot of those bowl games. But that's something, of course, way above my pay grade.
indeed. Uh, I don't know how I got this separated, but the four teams that are still being targeted from the Pac-12 by the Big Ten are Oregon, Washington, Stanford, and Cal Berkeley. Stanford and Cal Berkeley would be fucking horrible.
Yeah, but I honestly feel like Stanford and Cal Berkeley, those are the most like. I feel like they're some of the smartest schools. They're the two smartest schools in the Pac-12, and they
That's
would
true.
really look at that and be like, "All right, I don't want to." Like, they would not let their student athletes suffer that much. I don't think.
That's fair.
That's just my personal opinion, but I don't know.
Yep. And then last thing, I have to bring it up. Todd McShay reported that Bryce Young sized up at 5'10 and a half. That's not good.
That is so not good. I thought he was at least at 6 foot, but goodness.
Dude, once I saw those pictures of like him next to Saban and him next to Kyler Murray, I was like, "Oh
Mm-hmm.
shit."
Well, yeah, that Kyler Berry's really not doing that good.
Yeah,
Well,
but if you're shorter than Kyler Murray, there's a problem.
yeah, I mean, Drew Brees was what 5'11",
I think so.
and like that was pushing it, and he had the NFL passing yards until Tom Brady decided to spend 30 years in the NFL.
True.
Like, he realistically should still, like, if Tom Brady would have been a normal player and retired 4 years ago, 3 years ago, like everyone else would have, and not, lose his wife and kids, Drew Brees would still be would still have those records. But of course, you can't say too much. Like, Tom Brady got him, he outlasted whatever. But Drew Brees is just a prime example. He's one of the best quarterbacks in NFL history, easily top 10, top 15.
Yeah. And the problem is like Drew Brees and Bryce Young have very different play styles. Bryce Young, though he is a fantastic and relatively a pure passer, he does run the ball a decent amount and he's pretty fast. That's where I think his size becomes more of a problem than it was for Breeze.
Yeah, I agree, but I think he's going to be a good enough passer because he is. he is so similar to Joe Burrow. With like, I feel like he doesn't feel any pressure at all. He can just again, the best example I have is 20 last year. So what is that? 2021.
Yep.
Yeah, 2021. He that last second comeback against Auburn. That last minute. I mean, where he led him 93 yards or whatever down the field and scored that touchdown. He just could not miss and had nothing but pressure in his face, and he just did so amazing.
Yeah. No, look, Bryce Young is a phenomenal quarterback, but I also do understand if NFL teams are going to have hesitation with him because of his size.
Yeah, I think they will. And that's something that he'll have to play against. But I think he's going to be proved to whomever decides to take him, and especially now he's going lower in the draft, maybe he will end up somewhere with a good offensive line, and he's just going to get back there and be able to throw the ball and be like, hey, look, I told you I was good. But that's something that, of course, that we're going to have to wait and see.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was a ton of college football stuff. Did not expect all that to happen in the last weekend of February. But yeah, plenty of stuff happened this past weekend in college football. Let's get into the NFL because there's still some more controversy brewing, even though we're a couple weeks out from the Super Bowl and now we're looking towards the combine and draft. Dan Snyder and the Washington Commanders. This whole saga is just, I feel like it's never coming to an end. But it was reported that Jeff Bezos bid $6.3 billion dollars and was denied. Some reported that Bezos was kind of being blacklisted by Dan Snyder from buying the franchise due to Bezos owning the Washington Post and Snyder not being happy with how the Washington Post has treated him in the past. Um, Amazon, or it looks like people were reporting that Bezos was out of the running, and now they're saying that that's not the case. Bezos was not is not blacklisted from buying them. Um, so there's a bunch of conflicting stuff, but it would make sense that Dan Snyder would deny him just out of personal spite. And then there is a growing concern amongst the NFL owners that Dan Snyder could choose to keep the team, and that's the worst case scenario here. Dan Snyder's demanding the NFL and owners indemnify him against any future legal liability if he sells the Commanders, or he will sue. That obviously angered some owners and has kind of restarted the talk of removing Snyder completely as the owner of the Commanders. This whole situation is crazy, and one person said that the people that confirmed Snyder's demands have added that this dispute is and could be getting pretty messy. There is a couple of buyers that are interested. One being Tillman Fertitta, who's the owner of the Houston Rockets, and he's involved in the bidding. I think that could be one that works out, but it doesn't help that now the Washington Commanders' three minority owners allege that Dan Snyder committed bank fraud in securing a $55 million loan without board approval, and then the NFL made it go away, and now a federal grand jury is looking into it. So things are just not looking up right now for the Commanders franchise.
It is not. And I mean, they haven't been that bad of a team. They have a good coach there. They just, are getting screwed at the ownership.
Yeah, that's been a case for their entire existence, but I'm not going into all that. Um, but yeah, it's such a weird situation. I honestly, the people I feel bad for the most here is Washington Commanders fans.
Yeah, they're getting screwed over the most by far.
Yeah, it is bad. Let's get into some other news though. So Lamar Jackson was asked about the hiring of Todd Monken, and he simply just had no input. So that's not a fantastic sign for Lamar staying with the Ravens.
Come to Atlanta.
Yep, please, I'm begging you. All right, and then the Broncos, their primary coaching staff has been finalized. So Sean Payton is obviously the head coach. They've brought on Joe Lombardi as the offensive coordinator and Vance Joseph as the defensive coordinator. Mike Westhoff is the assistant head coach, and Ben Kotwicka, I think that's how you say it, as the special teams coordinator. I think they've put together a pretty solid staff here.
Yeah, that sounds pretty solid. I mean, it's Sean Payton. He knows how to win. We proved it with the Saints. Won a Super Bowl, made it to the playoffs, won his division most every year. I mean, he's a great coach. Again, great coach knows how to win, and I think they're going to be a good team this year.
Yeah, I'm surprisingly I'm excited to see what all happens with the Broncos because there's just so much going on. But let's talk a little bit about the Saints. So they made a little bit of a cap clearing move here. So the kicker Will Lutz took a $1.5 million pay cut. Um, and so they're clearing a little bit more cap, which makes it seem like they're gonna truly pursue Derek Carr now.
Yeah, and I think they should. I think he would fit in there great.
Yeah, I do think so as well. There's already receivers there for him, and they've got a pretty solid team just in general. They just haven't been able to win because Andy Dalton was their quarterback.
Yeah, they definitely need to do. And I think another thing for them is they're just a lot of their players are getting older, getting up there. So I think I think coming soon they're gonna have to start cutting and releasing and drafting a bunch of new younger guys, or at least do that, or start drafting some younger guys for them to learn up underneath the older guys, and then start releasing and bringing up starting and whatnot.
Yeah, and it looks like now the biggest hump for any team trying to sign Derek Carr is that he wants 35 million a year, which really isn't that much now in the quarterback market. Like we talked about Daniel Jones, he turned down 35. He's looking for more. It's an interesting market right now for quarterbacks. So I think getting Derek Carr for 35 million a year really isn't all that bad.
Yeah, and I mean, I just kind of hate that. I understand, the NFL, they make literal billions of dollars, and every franchise makes hundreds of millions of dollars. But I do kind of wish that players didn't want ridiculous sums for everything.
Yeah, it's just, one person does it and then the next guy wants to one up him. And it's just, a series of growing this market.
Yeah, and that's just how it works. It's capitalism. So
Yeah, that's true. A
you
little
know
bit
that.
more, a little bit more cap clearing moves. So the Packers restructured the contracts of Jair Alexander and Preston Smith. So that created roughly $15 million in cap space. The Jaguars also created $10 million in cap space by restructuring Foye Oluokan's contract. So there are two more teams that looked like they're primed to make a free agency move now, possibly in the future, but when you clear cap right now, before free agency's really started, it does kind of look like you're ready to pursue a couple people.
For the Jags, who do you think they'd be pursuing?
Possibly offensive line, maybe just a couple of defensive players. Obviously, they don't really need a quarterback or running back or wide receivers. So,
Yeah, that I was thinking because they're gonna have. I know this is a bit off topic, but next year, they'll have T. Law, Evan Ingram, Travis Etienne. Who's the other running back? His name just left my mind.
Jamichael Hasty, he re-signed today. He signed an extension.
Yeah, and then you'll have Christian Kirk and he was just with the Falcons. We traded him down there.
Calvin Ridley.
Calvin Ridley. Yeah, so they have a pretty solid offense, I think.
Yeah, they do. They're in a really good spot. You give them a better offensive line, and there's some future there in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
All right, and then let's talk about this because I think this is interesting. So Marshawn Lynch was kind of defending Russell Wilson. He said that little, and this quote just says expletive. I'd assume it's bitch, maybe something else. That little something is good. I watched him come through and make plays, make throws, and I watched him make sacrifices. We didn't win the second Super Bowl, but at the end of the day, I really watched his sacrifice. Look, I think we all understand that Russell Wilson was a fantastic quarterback with the Seahawks, but I feel like it's his image is tarnished at this point.
Yeah, and I think mainly what happened with him is he just was getting older. The older he got, the more like almost cocky he got. And that's where his issues started coming in. Cause I mean, we saw a lot of the news recently. He tried to get Pete Carroll and the GM fired.
Yeah.
And you are, I'm sorry, but at the end of the day, you're just a player. And look what happened without him. They did just fine without him. So I think he was just letting all the spotlight and attention get to his head.
Yeah, it's not surprising. Based off of the image that has been kind of created of Russell Wilson, he does kind of seem like, a cocky guy, just very self-centered, not really worried about what could happen to anybody else. And I believe I put it in here somewhere, a little bit more about that. But let's talk about Jalen Ramsey here because it looks like he's probably going to get traded now. And he's already getting courted by other players across the league. But the two teams mentioned primarily for trade locations would be Las Vegas. He joined the Raiders or Detroit.
I would rather see him in Vegas. I think that would be. I don't know why, but I think it just like in my mind fits better
Yeah,
than
I
Detroit.
I think it's a fantastic idea for Jalen Ramsey to join Devontae Adams because that way he doesn't have to guard him.
Yeah, then they would have one of the best top three receiver and a top three cornerback.
Yeah, it's a fantastic move. The Chiefs are expected to decline Clyde Edwards-Helaire's fifth-year option. I can't help but think this is probably a result of not just injury, but also how well Isaiah Pacheco and Jerick McKinnon played this past season.
Yeah, I mean Edward Hilaire, mainly those injuries and not really ever getting to be. He just never really did anything too amazing.
Yeah, he had a pretty solid rookie year that he still ended up getting, a little bit injured there at the end of, but just the last 2 years, it just seems like nothing can really go his way health wise.
Yeah, and again, it's not all his fault. You can't help injury, but I think that's the biggest thing is not being able to be healthy. You can't prove yourself.
Yep. And then it came out that the Bears plan to meet with all of the top quarterbacks in the class at the combine, but the expectation is still that Fields will be the starter. So I I, I just don't understand. It's like, okay, I think it makes sense that they'd meet with all the quarterbacks. Of course, they have the first overall pick. If there's a guy that just really stands out to you, take him, trade off Justin Fields. But it also is like, okay, none of these guys really excite us. Let's trade down.
I think they're just looking at their options right now. I mean, you could have the next guy potentially. Not saying that Justin Fields isn't, but one of these guys could be the next guy. You could take a chance on him, trade Justin away, just to see what their best course of action is. I don't blame them. I mean, I think really trading that number one pick for some more draft picks, players, whatever might be their best call, but I don't really know. I'm not really a big Bears fan or know the most about them. So I bet they seem to just always struggle as a franchise for as long as I can remember.
Yeah. And I think that the important thing is capitalizing on your draft picks, getting the best value out of them. If they don't see the number one pick as having the most value possible in this situation, trade it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's talk a little bit of combine here. So I just kind of have a list of guys that are and are not participating in the combine. So Bijan Robinson, kind of the consensus top running back in the 2023 NFL draft. He plans to do all on field drills and testing at this week's combine, as well as Texas's Pro Day on March 9th, which is just 3 days after the combine. This comes as a bit of a surprise to some because Bijan ended the year, missed the last, I believe, 2 games, or maybe the last game and their bowl game, with an injury, but it appears he's ready to go.
Yeah, and he wants to compete. I like that.
Yeah, it's a fantastic sign. A guy that can turn around from an injury, and he knows he's already the best running back in this class by far. He still wants to go out there and show NFL teams what he's all about.
Yeah, good for him.
And then Alabama edge rusher Will Anderson Jr., obviously one of the top prospects in this draft. He plans to participate in at least some on field work at the combine. Most likely not all of them, but He will be in the linebacker group, which starts on Thursday. Um, it is kind of interesting to see guys. They just like choose. Yeah, I want to participate in this one. I don't want to participate in this one. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, it is very weird to me how that works, but I mean, hey, you do you, I guess.
Fair. And then Kentucky quarterback Will Levis. He's gonna throw in Indianapolis, so good sign. Um, and then Anthony Richardson is also gonna throw and do all the testing and drills. And I think this is big for Anthony Richardson. We talked about it a little bit, but this is the chance for him to really show his physicality and his strength and his arm and just all of his playmaking ability, as well as just like the pure athleticism of Anthony Richardson could be displayed in the combine. And I think that's huge because he has a big chance to rise on everybody's boards.
I think the biggest thing with him is, are we going to get another Zach Wilson?
Yeah, that that is an opportunity there.
Someone who, just does a couple of these crazy things in the combine, whatever, and they just magically jump up on everybody's board, and then they don't really do anything once they get to the pros.
Yeah, I think Anthony Richardson's a little bit of a different case because, like, at least he was playing Power Five football, and he is a guy that's been looked at all season. He just didn't quite live up to the expectations we had. But when it comes to like how he sizes up, he is the perfect size.
True. That is very true.
And then Texas Tech edge rusher Tyree Wilson, who is another, kind of like projected top 10. He's progressing well in his recovery from the fractured foot, but he just started ramping up workouts about 2 weeks ago, and he's not going to go to the combine, but he will participate in his pro day to do his drills and testing.
You know,
Uh,
good. Yeah, good for him.
yeah, it's smart to just wait because look, the thing is you can miss the combine.
Yeah.
We've seen plenty of players just not go to the combine, just do their pro day, and they're fine draft stock wise. You're still gonna like he's still gonna be meeting with the NFL teams. It's just not gonna be in at the combine. And then Jalen Carter, one of probably a top player, a top 3 pick most likely. He will not participate in the workout portion of the week's combine. He will do interviews with teams and the physical assessments. Um, and then he will work out at his pro day at UGA on March 15th.
Yeah, I think the pro day. A lot of players prefer to do the pro day,
Yeah, I think
and I think
it's. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say I think it's just because they're comfortable and they're in a more comfortable situation than the draft or the combine.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then like as well as that, like you have all your coaches around, your teammates are kind of participating with you. It is much more of like a comfortable environment to show off like what you're so good at.
Yeah,
Uh this is some interesting news here. So it doesn't appear that the Vikings are interested in another 1-year extension for Kirk Cousins. It
hmm.
looks like the Vikings could do either a long-term extension or let Kirk Cousins play out the existing deal and then see what free agency has for him, see if he's going to come back, see what they could do there.
Yeah. I mean, see this. Let him see it out this year. See if he does as good as he did last year. I mean, he's a consistent quarterback.
Yeah, for sure. He's a model of consistency at the quarterback position, but I definitely understand this. It's kind of like the fact that they're even willing to consider the long term extension shows that they do trust Kirk Cousins at quarterback. But I also understand let him play out the existing deal, because let's say next year doesn't go all too well, let him walk, get somebody else.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's a good call.
And then this is a quote from an NFL coach that anonymously said that. Um, he spoke to Chicago, potentially keeping Fields. He said he kept the Bears in games that they had no business being in. He showed that he can overcome deficiencies around him, which is pretty big to hear from an NFL coach talking about Justin Fields because they were what 3-14 So
Mhm.
obviously the season didn't quite go their way, but he's right. Justin Fields did some fantastic stuff last year. Like, it's not normally a quarterback stat. Dude was like number 7 in rushing yards this season.
Yeah, that is pretty impressive.
Like an over 1,000 rushing yard season as a second year quarterback. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that is very good.
And then the Bears have already been approached by multiple teams about trading the draft's number 1 overall pick. Chicago said it is leaning towards moving the pick. So it looks like it's up for sale, but they're in an interesting spot because there's a few teams in just the top 10 that could trade up. Of course, the Texans at 2, the Colts at 4, Raiders at 7, the Falcons at 8, which I think is the least likely of the bunch, and then the Panthers at 9. So, yeah, they've got plenty of teams to deal that pick to. It's just about finding the right value, like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, you're right there. Can't. So you said exactly the point.
Yeah, and then the NFL's committee on rule change and things like that. They looked at 80 plays of roughing the passer, found only 3 questionable. That's
Hmm.
such bullshit. I feel like there's always a roughing the passer call where I see it and I'm like, if they didn't call it, nobody would have said anything.
Yeah, wasn't it? Tom Brady who said the old man, even him. Didn't he even say that they're being softer on quarterbacks now?
Yeah, and I think this person that said this was very right, saying that the big conversation is the sling versus slam. So slamming a quarterback down is obviously the problem here. When a defender
Hmm.
picks up the quarterback, throws him on the ground, that's a problem. But the sling is more considered a natural progression because look, if your momentum's going at the quarterback and you're a giant defensive lineman or linebacker, you're just you can't stop on a dime like that as soon as he releases the ball.
Yeah, like I think they forget. Yeah, they're getting more athletic, but when you are 6'4", 320 pounds, you're a dump truck moving.
Yeah,
There, it's really hard to stop that big old body that quickly.
there's a reason why an 18 wheeler's got different brakes than your Honda Civic.
Yeah.
And then some more news. So the Washington Commanders released Carson Wentz.
Woo.
Definitely makes sense. They save $26.17 million against the cap by releasing Carson Wentz. So it seems like this was just a huge overall win for the Commanders.
Yeah, that was a great move by them.
And then Derek Carr is going to be in Indianapolis during the combine to meet with several teams as his free agency kind of continues. And look, it looks like it's going to be a long process for this free agency with Derek Carr. So don't expect anything happening too quickly. But look, he's a guy that deserves a good spot. He deserves to be on a winning team. I know that his years in Oakland and Las Vegas haven't been outstanding, but the guy's a very solid quarterback.
Yeah, he's a very solid quarterback who can get you wins and can potentially get you in the playoffs, deep into the playoffs, if you give him the right team.
Yeah,
So
and
yeah, I think certain teams that they're missing that one piece, and most likely, just a consistent quarterback.
yeah, that does seem to be the common thing missing for a lot of teams. Uh, Let's talk about this real quick because I thought it was interesting. So, quarterback usage is the highest in NFL history. A record number of designed quarterback runs, record number of QB sneaks, and the second most QB scrambles in league history. Perhaps related to that is that there was an all time high 69 starting quarterbacks used this past season because of rotation or injury.
Hmm. Direct,
So, yeah,
direct.
the effects are obviously showing.
Yeah, I mean, quarterbacks, as we know, are soft. They aren't meant to be running backs and run the ball. But I also think that's just also how that's how the game is nowadays.
Yeah, it's evolving, and scrambling quarterbacks have obviously become the premier guys in the league.
Yeah. I mean, that's just exactly how the game's evolving, and maybe we're gonna get to the point where you're gonna have your starting quarterback, and then you're also gonna have a really good backup quarterback because your starter gets injured or whatever.
Yeah, I think this puts a ton of value in drafting young guys and just kind of like, later round picks and just letting them become a good backup quarterback.
Yeah, and especially now with having 45 games in NFL season, like you got to give these guys a break at some point.
Yeah. And I do want to talk about this. This is super interesting. So, this guy laid out the most expensive offenses in the last 4 years in the NFL, and then the bottom five, the least expensive. So, number one, Indy. That obviously hasn't worked out. Dallas, uh, definitely still hasn't worked out. Green Bay, haven't won shit. Tampa won a Super Bowl. They've spent 400 million on their offense over the last
Win
four
one Super
years.
Bowl.
Yeah, for one Super Bowl. Cleveland, sure as shit hasn't worked out. Vegas, once again, hasn't worked out. Tennessee, it just seems to be a trend here. The Chargers, the Commanders, and then at number 10, the 49ers, who probably outside of Tampa and maybe Green Bay are the most successful of the bunch. Like, that is interesting how that works.
Well, I think that's because they bring in so many different people and they have to sign these big contracts for these guys that only have the potential of changing their team. You know, they think they're going to come do this big thing and then they're not. And then they just have all this dead cap, basically.
Yeah, it's a matter of, these all these teams, they brought in guys that like big money players, but there's still holes all over the field.
Yeah.
And then the bottom five also haven't worked out. Carolina, Miami, Pittsburgh, Denver, and Baltimore.
Yeah.
So it looks like it's kind of all about finding that middle ground.
And I would love to see a defensive side of this to see if the defense, if you have Niners number one, it's like, oh, well, of course, that makes sense. They've spent the most on the defense. They're the best.
Yeah,
So I wonder if there's the same for the opposite side of the ball.
yeah, I would be interested to see that. Um, Looks like the Eagles are open to trading Quez Watkins. Watkins, obviously, an absolute speed demon. He ran a 4.340. He's just kind of struggled. He's been a little bit inconsistent, but still a solid wide receiver. So, yeah, I could definitely see him being traded. The Eagles could probably get okay value out of him. Definitely not like top tier wide receiver value, but um, they could probably get a pick or so, maybe a player.
Yeah, maybe.
And then this was awesome. So The Rock, obviously, a pretty big owner for the XFL, probably like majority owner, right?
Yeah, I think he's the big main owner.
Yeah. And then so he tweeted about AJ McCarron. He said AJ takes less money signing with us over the NFL because he wanted his little boys to see him play. Now he's 2-0, led his team to back exciting last minute wins. I'd say he's creating more memories for his boys. AJ's decision means a hell of a lot to me personally. And this is fantastic to see. Obviously, The Rock is just such a big personality, but seeing it come from the owner of the league that AJ McCarron's playing in, and seeing what it means to AJ and what it means to The Rock to see this story unfold.
Yeah, and I've said this before. I kind of enjoy spring league because it's just you're doing spring league because you just have a love for the sport. You know?
Yeah, these guys aren't doing it for the money. We talked about that last week. Like it's a real grind to get through all of this, and it's only for the guys, like you said, that really love the game. The guys that want to continue playing this game for the rest of their lives.
Yeah. So that's really why I like these spring leagues, and this is a prime example of it.
Yeah, and it's also just great to see AJ McCarron doing some great stuff. Obviously, won national titles at Alabama and then never really amounted to anything in the NFL. But finding a way for him to just continue, not just you know uh, creating a legacy of his own, but showing to his sons what their dad has been so good at and what he created a career out of.
Yeah.
All right, I got a fun little NFL, or not really NFL, but just sports history fact in general. So, on the Montreal Expos website, there's a newsletter talking about Patrick Mahomes Sr. being signed on as a pitcher in 2004. Tom Brady was drafted as a catcher for the Expos in 1994. There's a possibility that if Brady focused on the MLB and the Expos never moved, that Mahomes and Brady would have been a pitcher and catcher duo.
Huh.
Like, that is so crazy.
That is crazy.
And then some news that's not quite that crazy. Falcons released Marcus Mariota. Brock, how do you
Yeah,
feel about this move?
I think everyone saw this coming. Old Desmond Ritter had a good. He did pretty good. He did just as good or better than what Mariota did. Mariota still has like potential in the NFL, but I don't think he's gonna really do too much. Uh, I mean, I think Atlanta right now is really set. Desmond Ritter is, I think, a much better choice for a quarterback in Atlanta. Be our kind of transition quarterback. I mean, if you look at Atlanta, all their best players right now are all rookies or young.
Yeah, they're in a good spot to kind of just continue to build this young team. And I think that, getting rid of Mariota, especially with all the turmoil that happened at the end of the year, with his benching and him getting the surgery and all that, um, I think that it's the best thing right now for the Falcons to move on.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think again, Mariota, not Mariota, but Ritter stepped up and did a good job, and he will be there until Atlanta fixes their defense. Probably hopefully this off season, this draft, next off season, and then hopefully next year, there's a quarterback in the draft we really want, we will trade up for something along those lines.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic way to look at it. And then uh, this is just kind of funny. So Sam Howell, Washington Commanders quarterback, said he's excited to be the starter and QB1 coming into the year. This news was followed by Ron Rivera, the head coach, saying Sam Howell is not our starter, but he is coming in as QB1.
I like that by Ron Rivera saying you don't have it on lock, don't get cocky.
Yeah, but also, I would love to see Sam Howell be the starter for the Commanders.
Oh, I think he will be good as their starter. He had a great college career. I think he's a good quarterback, and I think again he's going to be a good uh, middle of the road guy. I don't think he's ever going to be the big time star, but I think he's going to be great to be there for now.
Yeah, and then let's see. So Jordan Poyer, the former Bills line or corner, or maybe he's a safety. I can't remember. I know he plays in the secondary. He's a free agent. He said that he'd like to not pay state taxes, and he also lives in Miami. So looks like he's going to the Dolphins. Mike
Hey,
McDaniel was asked about this situation and said, "I'm not in the business of tampering. We need all the draft picks we can get."
fair enough.
Which, okay, look, it's pretty obvious Jordan Poyer's going to go to Miami here.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
that's
let's see. Okay, so this was an interesting one. So the Giants, they cut Kenny Galladay, and they paid Kenny Galladay $40.4 million for 2 years. Okay, here's a breakdown of his stats per dollar. All right, per target, he was paid $434,000. Per reception, he was paid $939,000. Per receiving yard, he was paid $67,109. For every first down he got, $1.3 million. For every touchdown he got, $40 million because he didn't get a single one. And the more fun statistic here, per drop, he was paid $8 million.
Yeah, I cannot believe that he was just such a total bust.
Yeah, it's so weird because like he was pretty solid before he went to the Giants.
Yeah, he was. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, it is interesting, and it just kind of goes to prove that you really got to know where you're putting your money because it could really screw you over.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I do want to talk about this, and then we could probably move on from here. But Russell Wilson, it came out in an article from the Athletic. He had a private office space upstairs in the Broncos facility just for
Yeah,
him and his personal staff.
this goes back to he's just let all this get to his head.
Yeah,
Someone needs to go in there and knock him down a few notches.
yeah, and he said to his teammates that there was an open door policy.
He's not the
Dude,
coach.
just go to the fucking locker room.
Yeah, yeah. No wonder he had so much. No wonder he had all those issues at the end with Seattle because, like, trying to get the coaches fired. He thinks he's a lot better. He's the owner of the team. No, you're a good quarterback. That's all.
Yeah, I'd rather my quarterback go on a darkness retreat than have a personal office in the facility.
Yeah, same.
And Sean Payton said about this situation, no one would have complained about Russell Wilson's private office if the Broncos had won.
Yeah, but Russell really screwed himself.
Yeah, he's real good at that.
Yeah.
Okay, one last thing for the NFL, and then we'll move on. So the Eagles submitted a proposal to the competition committee to add the number 0 as a jersey number. And I'm
Hmm.
just saying, look, if Jalen Hurts or AJ Brown are the ones that are going to wear number 0, that would be sick as fuck. I think 0 is a fantastic number for college or for NFL players.
I think AJ Brown's always been one, so I feel like he'll stick. What is he right now?
Um, I think
Is
he
he
is.
11 or one?
I think he's 11. I think Devontae Smith's 1.
Hmm.
Could be
Well,
wrong,
yeah, I could see him going to 0 because I mean I know he was always one in high school and then one in college.
but it would be pretty sick for Jalen Hurts to get quarterback to have number 0.
That would be so cool.
All right. Well, let's talk. I'm going to talk a little bit about spring training, primarily about the pitch clock. And then we'll talk. I don't know. We're going a little bit long. We might skip college baseball this week, but I do want to talk a little bit of spring training. So, yeah, the pitch clock has just captivated baseball fans. So, just a little bit of a timeline here. So, Manny Machado was the first batter to get a pitch clock infraction. He was not ready in the box when the clock hit 8 seconds. So, that's a batter violation. He gets an automatic strike.
Hmm.
And then I'm sure you saw this one, Brock. The Braves and Red Sox game ended in a tie because it's spring training with the bases loaded, 2 outs, in a 3-2 count because of a pitch clock violation by the batter.
Yeah, I'm not. I've not been a big fan of this pitch clock.
Yeah, it's obnoxious now, but I think it's just kind of the getting used to stage.
Yeah.
Because like there's things happening like this. James Karinchak, relief pitcher for the Indian or the Guardians, asked for a new ball, and the clock was not reset, so there was a violation, and that's an automatic ball.
Well, and then that's on the umpires.
Yeah, and then Joe Mantiply did not finish his warm up pitches in time, so that was a violation on him. And then Brennan Davis was not set in the box on time, and so the bat started at a 1-1 count.
Now, I did see something where it has sped up the game by it's about like 45 minutes or something. Like regular baseball game was like 2.5, 3 hours something. And it was down to like 2 hours and 15 minutes or something like that.
Yeah, I want to say the jump was like close to 3 hours down to like 2:15 or 2:30, something like that. But yeah, it has significantly slowed or sped up the games, but it's not speeding up the baseball necessarily. It's speeding up the non-baseball, like the part where nothing's going on is being sped up, which is why I do understand this move. One thing that has been obnoxious though is that in a couple of the fields in spring training, you can see the pitch clock in the background, and everybody is pissed off about that. They have assured that pitch clocks won't be visible on TV. They'll be off to the side, out of frame. But it's just so dumb that they would be in frame whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And then this kind of goes to like the getting used to stage. So when they were first implementing the play clock in the minor leagues, there were nearly 2 infractions a game for the first 2 weeks. By week 6, there was 1 infraction every two. Okay, I thought it was 10 games. Maybe just 2 games. I thought I had seen somewhere that it was every 10 games, but um, look, it's just gonna take time to get used to, of course. But I I personally didn't like it, but then I saw kind of how the game moves, and it doesn't change much.
Yeah, I kind of like it. I understand it, but I almost feel like it should be put in if the game that they have like you reach a certain mark and then it's like okay, we're only in the sixth inning and we're an hour and 45 minutes in. Throw it in.
Yeah.
All
All
right,
right.
I could see something like that, but I don't mind it. I'm starting to get used to it a little bit.
Yeah, and I've been trying to watch like a lot of these spring training games so I can kind of get a gauge of like how the players are reacting to it. And it seems like nobody really has a problem with it until there's a violation. They're like, "Oh fuck." But
Yeah.
it's not really that big of a deal. One last MLB thing I want to hit just because it's absolutely hilarious. So the MLB official Instagram posted something, just said like, "Drop your boldest NL Central prediction." And Joey Votto commented, first baseman, possibly a Hall of Famer for the Reds, commented, "Extraterrestrials arrive on Earth April 15th. The 12-2 Reds and the rest of the planet learn from, communicate with, and befriend our alien friends. This process takes about 5 months. Play resumes in October. Reds sweep the playoffs and are World Series champs. Side note, the aliens ask if I would like to accompany them on their ship back to their planet. I oblige, never to be seen again." Dude, what
Good
the
answer.
fuck?
Honestly, I think that's hilarious. Like players should do that more often.
Yeah, take baseball a little less seriously, like Joey Votto.
I think that's so funny. Just having a fun time.
Yeah,
Someone wanted something crazy to be said.
and this is something that's kind of getting overlooked here. Could this possibly be Joey Votto saying that he's going to retire at the end of the year?
Yeah, maybe that's what he's saying.
We'll just have to see. But if it is the case, I think Joey Votto's a Hall of Famer. Um, all right, let's just go ahead and hit stake your claim so we can get out of here. It's 12:30. I'm getting tired.
I feel that I've been yawning the last little bit.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and stake my claim here. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but Bryce Young will not only not go number one overall, there's a chance that he is third or fourth quarterback to get off the board. Look, it all comes down to actually, there's really multiple things. It comes down to his size, first and foremost, and the way that Anthony Richardson and Will Levis have been viewed throughout this process after the season. Because obviously, as the season wrapped up, it was pretty obvious that, Bryce Young was the consensus number one, CJ Stroud just barely behind him. And now it looks like maybe Richardson's the first overall. Maybe CJ Stroud's the first overall. And it looks like Will Levis is creeping up as well. Maybe not for first overall, but definitely up there. And with so many teams interested in a quarterback this year, there's a chance that Bryce Young just kind of gets pushed to the side a little bit.
Yeah, and I think few of the teams are going to regret that.
Yeah, look, I think he can be a fantastic quarterback. Don't get me wrong, but it's kind of difficult when a team maybe won't give him his fair chance because of his size.
Yeah, and we've seen this many times in the NFL before, where a lot of players have been passed up because of their size. I mean, look at Mike Hilton for example. I think he ended up getting picked up like fifth or sixth, maybe seventh round, and now for the last 5 years has been the highest graded nickelback in the NFL.
Yeah, and like we talked about Breeze, I know like a lot of people last year with Kenny Pickett, they were kind of out on Pickett because he was a little bit smaller. He had small hands. Like,
I mean, Joe Burrow's small hands.
yeah, same thing.
Russell Wilson.
Yeah, there's plenty of pretty successful quarterbacks in the NFL that didn't quite size up how people would want them to, that are still successful. So I'm not saying this to knock Bryce Young. Honestly, I think that him dropping would put him in a better position. But I just, I don't know. I think that the teams that are right there at the top, they need that, guaranteed build.
Yeah, I agree. And I think whoever ends up with Bryce Young, honestly, if Bryce Young drops down to Atlanta, I want to see it. I would so be okay with Atlanta picking him up over a defensive player, even though we need defensive players desperately. I think that would be a great pickup for us
Yeah, like if he's there, you got to take him.
because we're at the eighth pick.
Yes.
Yeah, so if he ends up down that low, hear me
Yeah,
out, Atlanta.
I don't know. I think the only way that that happens is if the Raiders don't go quarterback, because let's say the Bears don't go quarterback, the Texans, the Colts, they're for sure going quarterback. Maybe, like, I guess there's a scenario where the Raiders still pick a quarterback and it's not Bryce Young, but I don't know. I think that it's going to be tough to get Bryce Young at 8.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying if he's there, I would love for Atlanta to take him.
Yeah, 100%. All right, Brock, you got anything for us for Stake Your Claim?
I do not. Nothing crazy tonight.
All right. Well, we did just see your Ole Miss Rebels lose in basketball to Texas A&M,
We did, and
and
the Louisiana Tech in
yeah,
baseball.
it's been a tough weekend in beginning of the week for Ole Miss, but I'm
Hey,
sure the baseball team will turn it around. They've got time.
we won the series against number 13. We won the series against the number 13 team in the nation, so that's all that matters in baseball.
Hey, Florida State stomped the shit out of TCU this weekend, so I can't be any happier.
Yeah, but hey, our time will come, and all that matters is if you get hot at the right time.
Also, LSU, get fucked. You lost to Iowa 12-4. All right. Anything else for the people, Brock?
I do not.
All right, then we're gonna get out of here because I kind of want to go to sleep.
Felt that.
We will see y'all next week. Peace.
Peace.